Episode 31 of the Siege Show, presented by Jake and Guzz, and it's good to have you on board for this episode, Guzz. Of course, the most previous one you were not a part of, which I think, is that the first episode actually of the Siege Show you weren't a part of?
Yeah, probably. I don't think I've actually recorded a piece of content for this channel for multiple months at this point, but it has been a rather eventful but equally uneventful last few months for me, unfortunately, and we'll dig into that at some point. But yeah, good to be back. Rainbow Six 2025 still kicking, and it's likely going to be the biggest year ever for the game. So yeah, excited to kick things off.
It's good to have you back, and yeah, we've got quite a lot to go through as we typically do, especially with the kind of break period we had initially after Six Invitational, and for you during it. We got Siege X, of course, that's kind of been teased. We're going a couple of days before the actual reveal, and of course we'll be doing some content in relation to that. I've got no idea. I'm very much in the dark when it comes to Siege X. I have not been included on anything. So I kind of like that because I get to kind of, I guess, experience everything as everyone else does. Whereas, typically, and not pertaining to, I guess, Siege or, any of the Ubisoft stuff, but like I've been involved in like betas or alphas in other games. It does take a little bit of the, surprise element away from it. So I'm kind of just excited to just see everything be all glossy new. Other stuff, of course, that we got for today's episode. We've got Rauora, new operator, SI recap. There's drama, especially in relation to a lot of the transfer stuff that we've seen over the last few months. And so we've got quite a bit to get through. We won't sort of just linger too long. Very quickly on Siege X, because this episode goes out before the reveal. What are your thoughts on the teaser, Guzz, that we got to see at Six Invitational? I know that you would have been watching that particular teaser reveal. Did it give much away? Is there still a lot that everyone's going to be surprised by when we see more on March 13th?
I'll take a quote out of Pengu's book. I can't remember exactly what it was that he said on live stream, but something along the lines of...
That's all I can say. Like, I cannot... I'll get fucked in the ass by a million cocks if I leak anything. That's in my contract with Ubisoft. A million cocks at once. So I really don't want to leak anything.
Right?
So obviously I'm not going to share all too much because I don't want to get in trouble. But let's just say that, yeah, the reveal was super exciting. I mean, I had literally zero vision on that, and I think the presentation and all that was really cool. It gave away some stuff, but not everything, of course. There's a lot to look forward to. And yeah, like you mentioned, there'll be a lot of content from us surrounding that. And that's basically as much as I can unfortunately say at this point. But yeah, come March 13 with the reveal, be able to talk a lot more.
Yeah, you'll be able to talk a lot more, I guess, and dive deep into the things, hopefully. Whereas for me, I've got no idea. So, I mean, I'm going to be very much fresh-faced when it comes to Siege X because I think it would be, silly of people to assume those that sort of are around Siege don't necessarily know some things. I'm just not one of those people. I've got absolutely nothing on my plate when it comes to Siege X. I'm excited. I'm very hopeful, I think, as well. Like, I mean, from my perspective on it, considering I don't know anything about it, there's always going to be that element of like, is this something that's going to work? Is this something that's actually going to benefit the game overall? It's not a Siege 2. I remember in Boston, that got a huge round of applause when people found out it's not considered a sequel or a new game, or that it's a 2. There's too much of that in the industry right now, where we're seeing like Counter-Strike 2 and Overwatch 2, for example, and others. But I think it's just very much going to be a classic case of, we are just going to revamp this game, make it better, refreshen it up for modern age gaming, and that's what Siege really does need. And if you think about what the biggest point in Siege's time was in terms of an update, it probably was Operation Health all those years ago. And so I kind of look at this as the new age Operation Health for the game, and that's what I hope Siege X will be, is to bring the core foundation of Siege into the modern era of gaming, give it that platform, build on and move forward, and hopefully keep it nice and steady moving forward. We'll see if it can do that. I don't know. I hope it will.
Maybe. I wish I could say. I don't know. Look, all I will say is there have been multiple times over the last probably like 6 to 12 months on this podcast. I mean, for context, I'm pretty sure I'd be able to say this because it's not under anything I've signed or whatever, but like, I first heard about Siege X, or not, it wasn't even called that at the time, under the from the grapevine in like 2023, which corroborates, I can't even get that word out for some reason, with the sort of the 3-year timeline. I think they mentioned that they've been working on this particular thing. So yeah, I've been like trying to hide this secret, it feels like, for ages. And then obviously hearing more about it more recently, etc. Yeah, I think it is going to be good. Again, I can't really say much more than that, which is really frustrating, but yeah, I'm excited for the showcase. It's going to be good.
Not too long to go, of course, especially from when this episode does go out, only a couple of days, and then we'll have a new episode in the next one where we will look more into the details of obviously what does get revealed pertaining to Siege X. We'll move forward. Newest operator, Rauora, which was revealed, of course, at Six Invitational Boston. Another operator as well, or another piece of content, that I had no idea. Typically, at events, we get kind of sometimes shown the showcase reveal maybe a couple of days beforehand, as we had actually in Sao Paulo, but it didn't happen this event, and I actually completely forgot about that as well. Okay. Literally, we get to the day, and I was like, oh yeah, shit, this is actually like new information. It's like we didn't get shown this, so I'm just sitting in the crowd watching it all as well, and when the Dom panel launches came out and we saw the barricades on the door, everyone in the crowd was just like losing their shit. I think it's definitely an operator that can change the landscape of Siege a little bit. We always have to be a little bit mindful and careful of when new ops come in, whether we think they're really bad or if they're really good, because it's always going to be that case of hit and miss. But what I like a lot about Rauora is it's not simple. But also at the same time, it's not too difficult to grasp. See doorway, shoot your Dom panel, and the barricade goes down. But there's so many elements to it, guys, where it's like the way you shoot it, it's quicker compared to the defending team. Whereas if they shoot it, it's slower. Then you've got the whole drone aspect as well in terms of the bottom portion of the barricade, the way it gets destroyed. There's a lot surrounding this barricade, and I think that for me, again, it's the kind of operator that comes out, and I look to the pros and I think, can they make this part of the meta? And if so, does it just change a lot of Siege?
Yeah, I mean, from my limited playtime so far in ranked, I hesitate to say that this operator is going to be powerful, because I don't think that's the case, and I would even say borderline situational. I think there may be some very specific use cases where it is actually useful, but I don't think it's actually going to be that strong. And that's not necessarily from the strategic benefits that I think it can actually offer an attacking team, because I think it does offer a lot of different playstyles, whether it be like boxing in and cutting off roamers, or using it for executes and blocking lines of sight and routes, etc., etc. Like, theoretically, I think it does offer a lot. It does fall short, though, I think, in terms of its limitations with deployment, right? So the range, I think, is about 15 to 16 meters, so it's not particularly long. And it has the same kind of drawbacks that original Grim had. And I don't really think you'd be able to remedy that. And that's the fact that you have to basically dry peek into what is a rather small window. It's a rather acute angle as to how front on you have to be to shoot it. It's not like you can be 15 meters away, like on a really side on angle and shoot it, or try and bank it off like you would with a Grim or whatever. You have to be quite front on, and obviously it goes without saying that if that's like a hot part of the site that you're trying to cut off, there's a fair chance that there's a defender there. So I think there might be an evolution where we actually see teams, flush out those positions correctly and then allow the Rauora to peak and actually deploy that utility. But especially in sort of a ranked environment, it is very volatile and difficult often to actually just even get the utility out. The amount of times you see people fumbling with it because of the deployment and how difficult it can be and the pressure, etc., means that it doesn't really get a ton of value compared to other like crowd control devices. Like, I know, for instance, myself, I've been playing a ton of Grim recently, and I think in most circumstances, Grim is just objectively better and safer to deploy. So I don't really know what you would do to remedy that. Again, we need to see it more in pro play, and hopefully that will be the case at like a reload, for instance. Some teams might cook up some pocket strats, especially when you factor in things like the drones, which prevent it from being deployed, and then you can't shoot the target, and little strats like that we're beginning to see. So I think it has some use cases, but you can't just like solo run around like you do in the trailer and block off all these amazing positions and expect it to just completely stop the defense from doing much. There's a lot more layering to it, which is good in an operator, because having basic tools on everybody is boring. So yeah, it's an interesting operator. Sort of simple on the surface, but in terms of actually using it and getting value at a predictable rate, I think is very challenging.
Do you think flashes would help if you were to give Rauora flashes?
Yeah, potentially. I mean, I don't really hate the fact that it is limited, though. You don't want her just being able to run around solo, flush out these positions, and then
so it's probably
immediately block
more
them
of
off.
a,
It should reward teams that actually flush out these positions and lines of sight, and then you get the added value of the Rauora on top of that, which I don't think is bad. I just think it limits the use cases,
Well, does that
which, again, it's not necessarily a negative.
Does that just mean then it's the kind of operator that you may not see as much in solo queue ranked experience, or at least want to play as a solo queue operator? But when it comes to that objectified team play and playing around its strengths and minimizing its weaknesses, you could maybe discover those niche maps and sites where it's like, hey, we can bring their Rauora and do this strat that we've cooked up and try and do something here. And I think when it comes to Siege, I don't think that's a bad thing. You don't necessarily want to have operators that are just chosen every single round, regardless of site. And there are a couple like that as well. When it comes to like a Deimos, for example, it's just so oppressive and so strong. You can bring it anytime, anywhere. Then, that's going to become an issue when it comes to balancing. I think it's fine to have these niche picks that teams sort of pick up on and be like, well, actually on this site, and if we play this way in this strategy, this is where it's actually quite useful. And I think a good example of that would be something like Sense, especially even before the most recent addition and change to the shield screens, being able to toggle on and off. The only time you saw a Sense was like maybe Consulate and maybe Chalet Trophy through the drone hole, like very, very niche areas where you would see it. And certainly there's a couple of others here or there, but it was not the kind of operator you saw that often. And maybe Rauora can kind of fit into that role. It'll be very curious to sort of see and watch. And I think in terms of any potential changes, nothing would really happen until we see pro play, because I think it will be the kind of operator that we see more of in pro play than solo queue.
I think to summarize, the gadget, remain untouched until reload and get the data from that event. But the pistol, I think immediately needs to be buffed. The pistol is shit. It's got a horrible rate of fire, and the recoil is just unmanageable, horizontally especially. So I hope we see that get tweaked, because new guns, people beg for them, should make them at least semi-playable.
So let's go to 6 Invitational 2025, an event that unfortunately you were not at, Guzz, which was really disappointing for a variety of reasons. I mean, I guess before we kind of dive into the event, if there's anything that you wanted to sort of say regarding your experience of not being able to go, the reasons why, how you felt, all of those kind of things, let us know. Tell us.
Is this like the fucking therapy session or something? Jeez.
How do you feel?
I feel a lot less stressed out now. I guess for those who are unaware or looking for some more details, I was meant to be at 6 Invitational 2025 alongside everybody else that was at the event. As part of working this particular event, we were required to have a specific visa type to be eligible to work and get through customs. Unfortunately, as part of that process, I encountered a delay where essentially immigration requested more evidence to support my case. That in turn also reset the counter of how long that particular process takes, which I think is like up to 15 business days. And so even at a best case from that point onwards, it was likely that I was going to be at least somewhat late to the event. A similar situation happened to Hap, where he had a delay like me. And then the follow-up was a little bit quicker, so he was able to get to the event. Unfortunately for me, I think I eventually got it approved and then the visa printed out by like Thursday/Friday of the final week of the event. And so understandably at that point, Blast and Ubisoft were kind of like, hey, tough luck. It's too late, which obviously makes sense. But yeah, the entire process was, like, I kid you not, probably one of the most stressful couple of weeks that I've endured, just spending hours trying to get shit sorted. I'm working on alternate time zones because Blast are located in the Nordics, so it's like complete opposite time zones. I'm up in like meetings and emails and all this shit at like ridiculous hours. And then having to sort, contingency plans and all that. And ultimately it fell through. So, I mean, in some regards, it was nice to eventually get the visa approved and not having to have additional stress of, future implications in the US. But yeah, missing the event sucks. And I mean, the career / financial implications of that are also not great, because it means that, you know, we didn't get to work any well, I mean, you did work one finals with Des, but yeah, limited the earning potential really for both of us. So you know, you were also impacted indirectly, or I suppose directly as well. So I mean, the whole thing was just a shitstorm. But such is life. We move on now, and yeah, hopefully it doesn't implicate us too much in terms of future talent selections, which I don't think it will. But yeah, it sucked. And also the event, again, being in the US, shit time zones, trying to watch the games as well was not optimal. So yeah, it was just a shambles all around. But
yeah. I guess to add a little context from my side of things as well, you know, like what's interesting is we went to the consulate together, and I got approved that day, whereas you got kind of sent back because of the petition not having been approved yet. And you know, it really is just a case of just you kind of hit, you know, a zero, and you just got super unlucky. You hit an agent that just kind of wasn't quite sure, and so therefore the process got delayed. And similar for Hap, you know, you think about all of the talent that had to go through this, and it was just you two. Like, it's clearly just a case of like, damn, this was like super unlucky and it just happened to be you. I think it needs to be said that this is not a case of like really anyone's fault. These things happen in a similar fashion. You know, like I had a visa issue in Montreal as well, where there was simply just a misprint, and because there was a simple misprint, I had to go all the way back to the airport and get that sorted, which meant I did end up missing a casting day. So, you know, these things do happen in this industry. You have to just roll with the punches. You know, so when we found out that you weren't going to be there, Hat wasn't going to be there, it made it pretty simple that I was going to just go and cast with Emmy for the event, which we did the first 5 days together, all of phase 1. And interestingly enough, then Hap got approved right in time for phase 2. And of course, again, Hap being in Europe, that's a very quick travel time. That's, you know, you can do that quick turnaround. Whereas for yourself, it's a little bit more tricky. The consulate had your visa, so even when it did get approved, that still takes 2 days to get that back. Then it's a 20-something hour travel. Then there's time zones, everything. It's far trickier. And also the fact that Hap got approved like a good 4 or 5 days before you did anyway. So with Hap's approval and being able to get there for phase 2, I was in this position now where I was this floating caster. Obviously Fluke and Hap wanted to cast together, so then they go duo phase 2, and I end up just kind of floating with Des and Ace, which was great. Obviously big thanks to those guys for allowing me to have some time with them in phase 2, but it's still a bit of a shit experience, not because of having to cast with them, but because it's such a disrupted event. Like, you're obviously not there at all. That sucks for you the most. And then for me, even though I am there, it's incredibly disrupted. That it's just doesn't feel like that proper event. And, that's unfortunate.
It's like a similar analogy to a team, making an international event, and then players miss their visas and you're caught playing with subs. Like, it's exactly. Just like, you're happy to be there. It's great to be there. It's a good experience, whatever, but it's never as good as being there with, your duo / team or whatever. And it's just inherently disruptive. I mean, you could go there and cast with the best Rainbow Six caster in the world. I'm not, like, theoretically or whatever, it would still just disrupt your flow, which
exactly
impacts your work, it's just a shit experience for everybody. And not to mention as well, like, again, this I'm not like the only one that's stressed out. It's you, it's Blast, it's Ubisoft, it's the other casters that get impacted because of the rotation. Like,
yep.
It's a massive thing. So, yeah.
And then obviously in the end, me and Des did one of the quarterfinals, which was at least nice to do, something in the arena and be kind of a part of that broadcast. And then I did the show match as well with Emmy. I should add, by the way, that there was a lot of sick people at this event. I missed that. There was a bug that went around and got everyone from production to talent, probably to players. I know that Team Joel were absolutely crook in the phase 1 period of the tournament. I got incredibly sick the day after my quarterfinal cast. I couldn't get out of bed the entire day of the semifinals. I just stayed in bed. I was able to recover enough to do the show match, and then of course had to travel home the next day, and I looked awful and felt awful, and eventually got home and just slept for another day. But yeah, a lot of people were crook. So unfortunately, you know, when it comes to these events, these things happen. It just also happened where everyone got sick for like finals. Some obviously got sick prior to that and were better by finals, and then others, of course, then caught it afterwards. Ultimately, though, the event itself, man, it's a strange one because I think that there's a lot that I really did like about Six Invitational 2025. First and foremost, like the theming of it, I really, really enjoyed. I really liked the whole like tux and like almost like Hollywood kind of vibe. Everything was like gold and white, like everything was clean and pristine. At first, I was like, oh, the jazz music's kind of cool. And by day two, I was like, yeah, no, the jazz music's annoying me. I was not into it. And especially by like, I'm going to be completely honest here. And I said this backstage, but like, by the time we got to the finals and like, I just didn't feel that vibe. The jazz music felt really out of place. I needed something a little bit more heavier, something a bit more intense. And the jazz music just really took me out of of phase 3. Phase 1, I thought it was fucking amazing. I thought it was like, oh, this is cool. You know, it's a jazz city. You know, you're playing into that. It's cute. It's nice. But by phase 2, I wanted something different. And definitely by phase 3, I felt like the music choice fell flat. I really, really did like the tuxes that we got as well for the final day from all of the crew that worked that final day outside of the show match team. And I think that overall, the event itself was largely fine, but it was always going to be in the shadow of 2024. I think regardless of how good 25 ended up being, it was always going to be in that shadow of 2024, which was arguably the greatest Six Invitational that we've seen, especially because of its ending. But not just its ending, Guzz, but you think about like that semi-final match as well with VP and how great that was. We had nothing like that here for 25. There was no classic matches in the quarterfinals or the semifinals. I mean, for fuck's sake, I think Montreal had better quarterfinals and semifinals.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think from a presentation and execution standpoint, again, I wasn't on site, but from watching at home, it actually seemed pretty clean. It actually seemed really, really well done. The stage looked great. Crowd was good. People performed well, talent-wise, etc., etc. And as I think it was Fresh that said on the desk multiple times, the actual quality of the siege from a technical standpoint was actually quite strong at this event.
It was.
But when you strip that away, the storylines and the lack of competitiveness, especially at live stage, was really poor. Like really, really poor. And I hesitated to say this. I think it was in our group chat probably the day after the event or a couple of days after, but I pretty much just boiled it down to one word, which was forgettable. I don't think this event is really going to be all that memorable. Sure, FaZe getting revenge in the grand final and being able to make up for 24, that was great and probably the most optimal ending, even if BDS being able to fight their demons also would have been a good ending. Just outside of that, what was a memorable moment at this event?
Well,
I mean, Bodega getting banned, like
yeah, and we'll touch on that. But like these are the phase 3 matches here, right? Very quickly, FaZe Clan versus Space Station kicked off in the lower bracket, and it was a 2-0. And then you had Unwanted and Razar Company, which was another 2-0. Then FaZe and Unwanted, which was a 2-0. Then Furia FaZe, which that is a match that I am using it as an example, that if you were to use that match in SI24, that would have been a banger. It would have been a 3-mapper. It would have been a grandstand. We would have been thinking, geez, that might be better than the grand final. Ended up being a 7-5, 7-2. And I was really looking forward to that matchup. And Dev and Nick ended up doing that in the semifinal. And it just fell flat. Like, you had this beautiful storyline, the redemption of SI24, the winner goes to the grand final, and it was just, quite frankly, shit. Fell flat. That's a game I looked to that really needed to be strong. The other one as well, BDS and Furia, which was what I was fortunate enough to do the upper bracket final. You know, this is a match that the winner goes to the grand final. You guaranteed your spot. Furia ended up losing that and then losing the next one as well, so they're out. But like 7-3, 8-6, like second map of Bank was okay, and Furia showed signs, but by and large, it felt like BDS were just always better and were in control of that series. And so that fell flat, and they're all 2-0s. Then we get to the grand final, and BDS, I mean, I will say the grand final was like, damn, this first map goes to infinite overtime. Yeah. It's a 9-7. BDS win it. The crowd is fucking on their side. This might end up being a really good grand final. I'm sitting here, we might go the distance here. This could be a 5-mapper. Then it's 7-5, 7-5, 7-4. And to me, it's the kind of grand final that was almost one of the greats. It was almost spectacular. It almost could have gotten close to last year, but it didn't. It was a 3-1. The final 3 maps didn't even go to overtime. And I think for the large part, it'll be pretty it's going to be pretty forgetful. It's not really going to be a rememberable grand final. That's just the reality of it. Obviously huge for FaZe Clan and for BDS in terms of their storyline now moving forward. And very much of that Chokers tag has been just like fucking nailed in on them now.
It's nailed on.
Yeah, it's nailed in. You can't lose.
It's imprinted.
Outside of EWC, you leave that to the side. It's a third-party tournament. It's not part of the main circuit. It's grand final loss, grand final loss, grand final loss. You can't have that. And I'm so happy for FaZe. Handy's my favorite player. And they get that redemption of last year and had the on stage hug with Nade as well, which was set up from production, which I thought was absolutely fantastic. I loved that. And I'm super happy for the brothers that they get to now go back to Brazil and they've both got a hammer each. How good's that? Yeah, imagine being twin brothers. Yeah. One wins one year and then the other one wins the next year. That is insane storylining. Super happy for FaZe. Will they become a tyrant of a team? I'm not too sure. It could also be a case of they've climbed this mountain, they've finally got over that hurdle, they might just be happy with that. Because honestly, it felt like to me a little bit that over the last 12 months, that's a bit of what happened, I think, with Furia. Like they got that hammer and it's so hard to replicate what you've been able to achieve. They talk of dynasty, that's over for me. I can't, I can't think that there's a way you can continue to call this a dynasty for Furia and that roster. I think that's done. Still a really great period, one that will go down in the record books because of that grand final win, but not a dynasty. And it gives us a clean slate now moving forward into the rest of 2025 and eventually then into SI26 now, where you don't have a clear favorite anymore. A lot of people had BDS coming in despite not winning grand finals. A lot of people, of course, had the likes of FaZe Clan, but will they be able to back it up, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So ultimately, though, rather forgetful SI, which is a shame.
Yeah, I feel like it is always going to be a difficult discussion about this event, regardless of how good it actually was, because it is in the shadow of 24, and it's just going to be naturally very difficult to, almost impossible to beat that level. Never mind reach it or even remotely get close, but still, when you look at those scorelines for the live stage, just so many 2-0s, and then it peters out in the grand final, just kind of sucks. Like the ultimate storyline overall, not bad. I like the fact that it kind of sets the tone for a refresh into 2025, which coincides with the game itself refreshing. So
I will say, as I go back for 2024, there were 2-0, 2-0, 2-0, 2-0 as well. And if it wasn't for that lower bracket final between W7M and VP, which was
that was a banger,
fantastic, and then the grand final as well. So you think about the last 2 games were by far and away the best 2 games of Siege at that tournament, and arguably for years that we've seen. That's what's elevated it, right? That's what it needed. No one really cares too much if the lower bracket quarterfinals are 2-1. No one really cares. Right? It doesn't really matter. It's a stat. It's like, oh, this was close. It was 2-1. Doesn't really matter. But those 2 games being the lower bracket final and the grand final being the best of the tournament, that's what you want. And we didn't get that for 25. That's it. I don't know if there's much else to really... Yeah, I don't really know if there's much else to talk about when it comes... Oh, I guess Bodega. Oh my God.
There's the Bodega. Yeah, what was that like? Obviously for me, I was just seeing stuff as the public was seeing it, to be truthful, in terms of the... I heard a little bit about the potential ban only moments before it was official, but yeah, what was that experience like actually for you at the event? Like, what did you see? What did you hear? What was the aftermath?
I don't know if I can't recall if I was actually working that day, but I know that it happened really quickly. It all happened really, really quickly. Like from one instance, you're like, oh, well, he's going to get a fine. And then the next instance you hear, no, he's literally getting ejected from the tournament and sent home, and he's like leaving tomorrow. Like, I think that when I first saw footage, and again, I can't recall if I was working or if I was like off a game or something, or if I was working. But I remember seeing the footage and I was like, yeah, that's not good. But is that is that like you should get sent home from the tournament bad? I'm not too sure. But apparently, and this is the thing, is that there was more than what we saw. From what I heard and from people I trust greatly, like there was more to what happened than what we just saw. And what we saw alone was already quite bad. And you could probably make an argument was well deserving of being ejected from the tournament. But there was more to that as well. There was more things that happened off camera as well. And I think that as much as that I find that kind of... You know me, I don't mind a bit of the shit stirring. I don't mind it. To a degree, though, and this is the thing, to a degree, I think that's crossing the line. I think the GGs in chat that we saw last year was crossing the line. I think there is that line, and you've got to try and either toe it or make sure you don't put a foot over it. And that was very much crossing the line. Because you know what? The first part of it for Bodega, I actually think was fine. I don't mind a little bit of that confrontation. I think it was with Nafe from memory, where, you know, you kind of go up to the opposing team, you have a couple of choice words, and then you back away. Would love that. That's how it should have gone down. Unfortunately, though, once Bodega makes it physical, line has been crossed, and you have now the right to be ejected from the tournament. And I think that's totally okay. And I think actually the way everything was handled perfectly from everything that I got to see at the event. You can't go physical.
I mean, I think it's pretty simple, right? Esports is literally a non-contact sport. If you're not shaking or fist bumping the opponent's hand, you're doing something wrong.
You can shit talk. Walk over to the opposing team. Tell them they're trash or that they played like shit or whatever you feel necessary to say. You can't make it physical. So I think that's definitely where the line was drawn. And then, I think from what I heard, he was also really rude or saying things as well to staff, production. I wasn't actually there physically, but I think everything was handled well. And it certainly was the first bit of drama at the event. There wasn't a whole lot, and Bodega just made it go from like 0 to 1,000, and it was just this massive spike. But I think that people will have to look at that and learn and be like, shit, you can't really do that. That's going too far. But I really hope it doesn't have the inverse effect where people now just go too much in their shells. I don't want players to be robots. I don't want them to be corporate. I want a little bit of passion and fire, and I like to see that from players. But I think that what we need to see is it be controlled and to be done the right way. And
honestly, I would just say if you're a fucking pro player or even a viewer or whatever, you want to know what good shit talk looks like, just look at ESL Pro League this season. It's been fucking elite. Like these shit talking interviews and mid-match and stuff.
Counter-Strike does it best because they don't cross the line.
It doesn't cross the line. Yeah. Exactly. They know how to toe that line.
I think it's great. I think it's like what you want to build is rivalry. You want to build, I'll use an example like Space Station Gaming, right? We all know that over the last 6 to 12 months, Space Station has been like a team, and a lot of the NA players and NA teams have started this whole like yelling in the booths and trash talking and things like that. Love it. I fucking love it. I think the way that they do it is also for the most part fine. I don't think they're crossing lines. You see them screaming out over the curtain or whatever, and they get very exuberant and exciting. As long as you don't cross the line, those things are fine. And then half the time, all the time, you then see them finish the game, either shake hands, fist bump, step up, whatever, and they move on. And I think that's how it should be done. But no one else does. The Europeans, boring, snooze fest. APAC teams, for the most part, boring, snooze fest. Right? Need to see more of it. I want to see these guys do it. At the end of the day, you cannot have an esport without this kind of drama. Drama sells. Hate sells. Negativity sells. I hate to fucking be the bearer of bad news, but it's the world we live in. You cannot just be all positive rainbows and sunshines. Otherwise, everyone's going to fucking leave. So as long as you do it the right way. Speaking of drama... Segueing.
Good segue.
Transfer drama, which if you want, you can maybe chuck up my tweet, guys. Go ahead and do that one if you want, which says...
Yep, if I edit this correctly, it'll be there.
The import rumors in APAC for Siege are pretty fucking shit to hear. Let's not turn APAC into secondary BR or EU, which of course is Brazil or Europe. None of this should be allowed, and I hope moving forward beyond this stage changes are made to stop this. Imports should be restricted to 2 maximum, not whole rosters, and I stand by that even to this day and moving forward. You cannot have 5 Brazilians, no matter how good they are, whether they're tier 2, tier 3, tier 1. I don't give a fuck if it's, Furia. going and playing in Korea, going and playing in Asia, going and playing in OS, or even going and playing in Europe or even North America. You know, a lot of people kind of like, oh, well, M80 kind of did something similar. No one cared when M80 went to NA with their Brazilians. Well, I mean, there were people that cared. There were people that were like, well, this is a bit messed up. Now it's getting a little bit fucking, you know, you're taking the piss now, okay? Elevate calling them out right here, dropping their entire roster 3 days out from roster lock to pick up some Brazilian roster. Fucking stupid. Stupid. What are you fucking doing? You're a partner team. Grow up and be normal. Like, what the fuck are you guys doing? I'm calling Elevate out. I'm calling Justin out. You guys fucked up. And you're making an absolute mockery of this whole import shit that we've seen in APAC. I mean, I don't want to be the kind of person that's like, well, I hope your roster fails. And I hope, you know, and because I've seen that on Reddit. You know, a lot of people are like now just doomsday hating on Elevate, for example. But I really hope it doesn't fucking work out. I really hope that roster does not work out, because it shouldn't. It shouldn't be allowed. That's the thing. It's not so much personal. I don't know those players, guys. I don't know those players. And I honestly, individually, for their sake, hope they do fine or whatever. But like, I hope it doesn't work, because I hope the system doesn't work. And because if it does work, you know what you're going to see? You're going to see more of it.
Yeah, you done?
Well, I mean, am I wrong?
No,
am I
we
wrong?
can keep discussing this.
Like,
no,
am I wrong?
No. I think the biggest counterpoint that I hear often about this entire thing is that people will come out and say, well, these imports and these imported rosters will help elevate, will help elevate the performance of the sub-region or of the region. And I think that is just the biggest load of fucking bullshit that gets perpetuated in this community. And the reason for it, in my eyes, is pretty clear. The teams that are going to get imported specifically to APAC sub-regions are not particularly great players. They are at best near the upper levels of tier 2 from their respective regions. They are not coming to APAC and getting paid fuck all. If they could just go to a maybe slightly less competitive team within EU and get paid more. I just think that is the reality of the situation. It's not going to elevate the performance of the sub-region really at all, if not that much, because eventually they come in, they have to conform to the meta, etc. I just don't think it's really a thing. Now, from a more broadcast perspective, if we continue to allow this to happen, and that's why, again, we are pretty much calling out Blast and Ubisoft for not fixing the rulebook, you are going to eventually, it might not happen overnight, it might not happen within a year, it might take a couple of years, you will find yourself in the same situation as LCS, which is a case study that I'm pretty sure we mentioned on this show like last year, in a situation where the majority or a large portion of the players that are in a particular region are not even from that country. So why would people from that country, one, want to watch it, and two, why would players from that region want to compete and improve themselves to compete in that region when those slots are getting taken by imports? It creates a really bad negative feedback loop for that region. Like, I even had a look before this particular broadcast, LCS, even in 2024, and I think that was after some revisions they made to the rulebook or whatever, it's still literally 33% South Korean players. So if we find ourselves in a situation where going forward in OS, like 33% of the players are from EU, almost half the players and teams are going to be rosters that the region itself isn't going to want to watch, so viewership will tank. And then you think about players that are coming up and wanting to compete at a tier 1 level in OS, they're probably just going to give up. It's not like they're really getting paid that much to compete anyway, and then to have those slots taken by others is just going to kill the region. So yeah, it really needs to be fixed. I'm probably not as emotional towards the orgs, and especially not the players themselves, as maybe you are, but I would probably just be putting that squarely back on the Elevate newbie that need to fix the rulebook.
The Elevate situation is...
The Elevate thing is more so the timeline.
What made me make that tweet, right? It wasn't the first team. If you actually bring it all the way back, guys, we got warning of this over in Korea with the Brazilian roster with D+. And so when that came to fruition, I was a bit like, okay, well, I kind of understand it a little bit, right? Because the Korean region has shown we want import coaches, we want import players. The region itself is dying. There's teams just aren't signing up. They've already shown willingness in the past. I think it was FearX that offered to do like boot camping and you know, trying to offer, we'll help your LoL team if you help our Siege team. And so when they picked up a Brazilian roster, it was a bit like, okay, well, I mean, this region's pretty much fucking dead. Like, I mean, I can't be too upset, but it's not something that should be possible. And also, you got to remember, with language barriers, it's very difficult. You can't have 3 Koreans, 2 Brazilians. It's probably just not going to work. So, like, you've got some regions that can't really intermingle in terms of this whole import nature, whereas, you can have an OS team pick up, say, 2 UK players, because that can work. Like, you all speak English, that can work. And speaking of actually OS teams, of course, Game of Gladiator is rumored to have now been picking up 3 players when it comes to the UK lads, joining Wedables and Brendo. That's been in the rumor pile as well when it comes to changes coming up. And, that goes into the same discussion. I'm like less adverse about this particular change. I do know things about it that don't keep me from being as upset in comparison to the Elevate roster changes, but it's still not something that should be allowed. For me, when it comes to the GG roster, it's not like I'm not upset or anything. I just don't think it should be allowed. I don't think you should have a 3-2 majority in favor of the UK lads over the Aussie lads in the OS region. So you either move them to EUL or move them to EU and they try and qualify in that way, because that theoretically is fine. That's what I'm saying in the tweet. It should be restricted to 2 max. This actually should be a roster that under the rule set should actually be competing over in EU. With the 3 UK guys and Wedables and Brendo, they should be over in EU. So that's what I kind of think of. And I think, honestly, when you look at Bleed, like if you look at when they got the 2 UK lads in as well, I think that's a fine way to go about it. If you can find a way to have a 3 majority and a 2 offset in terms of imports, no issues. I think because imports by nature aren't a bad thing. A good example is Korea and their additions of imported players or imported coaches. It spices up the region and helps out these kind of regions. You think about if all the APAC teams find a way to get 1 to 2 imports that are very good players, that is actually something that can elevate the region. That is something that can help improve everybody. But I don't think bringing in 5 Brazilians onto this Elevate roster is going to improve the region. They are going to scrim and prepare at home, fly in, play their games officially, fly home. Who the fuck are they helping? Who are they scrimming? No one. Like, they're not doing anything. I mean, and the same as well for GG. They don't want to scrim locally either. So, like, no one's helping anyone when it comes to these imports. So I don't really see the positives. I only see the negatives. And it's only up to tournament organizers and publishers, because I'm not, like, directly saying this is, like, a Blast and Ubisoft thing only. This happens in all esports, like we saw with LCS. I was a big fan of LCS growing up because I liked what they had, and it was all North America and it was just all Americans, and then slowly but surely it just got overtaken. I don't want that to happen in Siege in any region, not just APAC, but any region. So that's kind of where I see it. Otherwise, in 5 years' time, NA is just going to be full of Brazilians and Europeans, and same with all of Asia and APAC and Latam. You're just going to have 2 regions.
Like, I think
everything.
people are very naive if they think it ends here. Give it a couple of years and APAC turns into the tier 2 training ground for Brazil and maybe EU or whatever. Give it another few more years on top of that. And like you mentioned, I mean, NA is not on a hot streak at the moment. They're going to turn into a development region, and it's just going to concentrate the power even more to where you get a case like the LCS and League more generally, where it's like one country or 1 or 2 countries and regions just dominate. And it's just shit because it absolutely kills regional engagement. Like, it just kills it. And look, I understand that many people will be watching this and be like, oh, you guys are just from APAC, you're biased, etc. And yes, there is an element of that because our very like professional lives are reliant on APAC. But at the same time, I think, we're taking a step back and actually looking at it from a more global perspective.
Imagine if Team Liquid
it can be very damaging.
Imagine if Team Liquid moved their entire all Brazilian roster to North America to play in NAL because they're having a tough time getting to these majors because they're having to play behind the likes of Furia and play behind the likes of FaZe Clan.
And then they just fly in and fly out and continue to scrim in a strong Brazilian region. I don't want that either. Could you guys imagine the outrage? Just imagine.
I don't want that either. I mean, we already saw that kind of with M80 as well, where they had 4 Brazilians on the roster. I mean, like, you can't, like, that should never have been allowed. You can't. In any region, doesn't matter, even if it's 5 Brazilians in EU, I don't know why they would do that, but like, even that shouldn't be allowed either. So for me, pretty simple. I mean, 2 imports max.
either have a global ecosystem with regions like sub-regions that we have and have it actually operate in that fashion, which we should, or go full global. Like this mishmash in the middle is not going to end well. Like the line in the sand needs to be drawn, and it needs to be drawn quick before this gets out of control.
What is
because
is the rule right now
get out of
3-2, but like the other way? So it's like you have to only have 2 players from the region. Is that the current rule? I don't even know how that works actually, because like it can't be.
I'm fairly sure the restrictions are just not there anymore. I don't know exactly when.
Because you got 5 Brazilians in Asia, so
essentially the org owns the slot and can just be like, yeah, we want these players.
And we'll
as long as they are playing
No.
in that region, their actual like nationality
is irrelevant.
Disregarded.
Yeah, which is not how it should be. Okay, we'll move on. We've got a couple of transfers to go through, both rumors and some confirmations, and then we'll look to close this episode out. Of course, more to get through in the next episode with Siege X, etc. Stu Flex is retired, and the Wolves have broken up the French roster. Parting ways there. I actually thought I saw choice words about Deadshot and his move to Ents, that he was the one that broke up Wolves. Have you seen much about this?
There's all kind of drama. I didn't actually follow that particular drama. People are going to be a lot more informed on that than I am. But yeah, that was a bit of a Twitter shitstorm from what I saw. I mean, probably reflective of the state of that team was really in. I don't think behind closed doors, Wolves were in a very
They hadn't been performing for a while.
Place for a long, long time. So that team, it was inevitable that it was going to be broken up at some point. So yeah. I think the new roster looks pretty strong. So
yeah, well, I mean, we go straight to that. So they've basically gone from French to UK. They got, Noodle and Leader over from Team Joel, and they've picked up a couple of ITB boys and Fnatic boys. And I think the mix they've got, one thing I like about it is it's a new roster. Like you've got a couple of these guys who have obviously all know each other. They all come together. They now play on Wolves. And I think it's like kind of nice instead of just sometimes, one addition here or there. It's like a kind of just formulated big change. So Noodle and Leader stay together. You got some of the other guys from the UK. Curious to see how that goes. We had some OXG moves as well over in North America. What did we have? Diaz, Hat, and Newers. Apparently, I don't think that's been confirmed or anything. But I'm just looking at the transfer portal on Wikipedia. We've got Bolo retiring, of course, has recently had a child, so I can understand that full well. Where it's tough. Like you're kind of watching sometimes these players play in terms of the tournaments, and there's not that many of them throughout the year. But it's not just tournaments. You're scrimming, you're practicing, you're trying to keep your craft. Like you can't just go on a break for 6 months and then come back and play at a level required to compete for a hammer or trophies at a major. It's a lot of work. It's constant. It's consistent. And I think if you're someone like Bolo, he can just literally stream, be a dad, and it's pretty chill. And I would just do that. And I think he said in his tweet he regrets retiring the first time around, which makes sense considering he came back, and he'll probably think back, damn, I could have had an extra year or so. But overall, I like Bolo, but it didn't feel like he had that aura effect, especially at 6 Invitational. At times, it felt like, someone that's so elevated and so thought of as a superstar, to me, just kind of felt good. Nothing wrong with that. I think he was a good player, but I didn't feel like he was like this superstar. And not everyone needs to be, but when it comes to someone like Bolo, I think he's always going to have that tangible aspect attached to him, and it didn't quite happen. So then people start to obviously think, oh, well, he's, washed or losing it. I don't think so. I think he was more than fine. I don't think he had to retire, but life reasons are there. But at the same time, it's not like we're losing peak Bolo this time.
Yeah, I think you've pretty well summarized it. I mean, Bolo ends on somewhat of a high with a well-regarded career, and a really good example of somebody who was able to develop their talent at a really young age as a young gunner, and then make that actual transition across to tier 1 pro play successfully. I mean, many young kids will grow up playing the game, running around on Ash ACOG, throw them in a competitive setting, and they turn to shit, whereas Bolo actually had that composure and that ability, that natural ability, which really helped him. And was able to grind away, got a hammer, so incredibly successful career. And then, as you've sort of mentioned, he can now kind of kick back. I won't say kick back, because streaming is very much still a demanding job, especially if you're doing it every day or whatever your schedule may be. But comparatively to competing. For someone like him, you only compete if you really want to compete financially and from a stress perspective. And now being a dad, it just makes no sense. So, yeah, hopefully we continue to see him around at events and stuff. And yeah, wish him all the best.
Kobilax as well, guys, is a very intriguing one who copped a lot of heat over his tenure with Dark Zero. It was always this case of like didn't quite do well out of the gate and then wasn't quite improving fast enough. To me, he wasn't the problem for DZ. I think he was a scapegoat. You got a 19-year-old entry fragger that isn't popping off and dropping 20 every game. Wow. I mean, surprise. These are the kind of players you have to nourish and grow and back up and say, hey, keep going in. You're an entry fragger. Go in first. Like, if you die, we'll trade you. Like, I felt like he was a scapegoat on Dark Zero, and I really do hope Kobe gets picked up by another team in North America and is able to have a successful career. I mean, the kid's 19. Like, sometimes we forget that. Like, he's really, really young. And I, at times, saw him do things, and I was like, damn, this guy's actually pretty good. And a lot of people were giving him shit. I remember there was one day on Reddit where, actually, we even had the analysts prepare a graphic because, like, I think his day one was, like, absolutely awful, and then his day 2, 3, 4, 5 was like amazing, and they were like, oh, ever since we put the graphic up he was good or whatever. So like, he is capable. I do agree we didn't see it enough, and I do understand why they've probably moved on. You've got a roster that wants to win and compete for a hammer, and maybe therefore having a 19-year-old entry maybe isn't the way to go. So you got NJR, Pampazoo, and Nafe plus 2 to come. I do wonder who those two will be. Is there any knowledge in terms of rumors? I haven't heard anything or seen anything.
Not that I've seen.
Okay. And then lastly, you've got
M80.
Weibo Gaming picking up X Team Joel. And
we're just gonna jump across.
Well, we've got one more. Sorry, we've got M80 as well. But Weibo Gaming.
I feel like Spoit is decently big.
We'll get to Spoit. Okay. I was only because I just read their thing. So
you're good. It's time to learn Chinese, buddy.
Holman Reaps. Well, Reaps already knows how to speak Chinese. So does Mentalist, Turds to speak easy, and Ape. I guess very quickly on this roster. I mean, this is a roster that I like. I genuinely believe this is a roster that could be the number 1 seed out of APAC. I think that can happen. I'm not saying it will, but I do think that is a possibility if they all click. If they all click together and everyone's back on good terms, especially with everything that happened with Turd, and we'll touch on that to close. But ultimately, I think there's enough firepower there. I think Mentalist now removed from the playing position and becoming, I think he's labeled as an assistant coach, I think is a genius move, because Mentalist, I dare say, over the last 12 months looked washed in the server, but I think his brain is anything but. And I really think that could be a catalyst now where if you can have Mentalist's brain, but you don't have to worry about him going 4-13, this could be a roster. I mean, dare I say, this was a top 8 roster, wasn't it, last year at SI? Basically, I mean, the crux of it.
On a technicality, maybe they might have been in that band, right?
I think it might have been. Either way, or at least a large portion of it, I think it has got that capability. I don't want to go too early, but I'm pretty high on these guys, and I'm keen to see how it plays out. The one caveat will be the whole Turd and Mentalist situation, which we'll touch on after we touch on Spoit M80. Where's Spoit going, Guzz?
Well, according to the Liquipedia rumor page, it is Fnatic. And as much as I'd like to sit here and be like, oh, I know where he's actually going, I genuinely actually can't remember. I probably have seen it, but I don't actually genuinely remember. So that's going to be super interesting. Spoit, of course, is a hot commodity, not just because of his playing ability, but also his marketability. So pretty much wherever Spoit wants to go, he can probably go. And whatever salary he wants to command, he can probably command. So that leaves many options on the table for him. Still a player in my eyes that hasn't fully realized his potential at a competitive level. Yeah, sure, Berlin, amazing win. But when you think of Spoit and how big he is and how skillful he is at the game, it's the question of, can he lift a hammer? Otherwise, he's going to enter that discussion of being one of the greats that didn't transition into being one of the GOATs.
Who else is going to M80? Is it someone that we know, I think, very highly of? Possibly Mr. Fabian. It is on the it is on the rumors portal that he is potentially on his
message. I don't know about
he
that.
Could potentially.
I saw that Gav joined M80.
Yeah, I think that's confirmed.
That'd be a good replacement. First I've heard about Fabian.
Well, it's saying, Gavin Hot and Cold to M80. It's also saying Fabian to M80 and Spoit to Fnatic. So you've got some big moves when it comes to M80. They're clearly cleaning house. They want to change things up. You got Groovy potentially to Fnatic. I mean, the issue with going over all of these kind of like possible transfers is there's probably a good 50% of these that just aren't going to be right, and then maybe a good 50% that will be. And it's like, I don't really want to sit here and go through all of them. I mean, there are a couple interesting ones. Like you've got Virtue, Lasmu, P4, Robbie, and Freck to BDS.
Yeah, I mean, that BDS roster now, of course, leaving the organization leaves 5 slots for literally anyone to join. So
that's an interesting roster.
As well and where Virtue lands as well. I mean, we didn't talk about necessarily the drama at all about him, but it was quite a while ago now. But, you know, the CEO coming out and making a pretty...
I thought there was a possibility he could come home. I thought there was a very small chance he might have been able to go to like a game in Gladiators, and maybe that was something they were trying to do.
I don't know if I was in his shoes, and I'm not privy to every element of his life, of course, but as far as I know, I think his partner is from EU.
Right.
Why would you come back to Australia and get paid like a fifth of what you're getting paid in what you could get potentially paid there? Like, the only world in which he came back to OS was like he joins and it's like GG and he's getting paid $6,000 a week, or not $6,000 a week, $6,000 a month or something like that, which is just not going to happen.
Yeah,
so
it's got
I think at that point you just retire.
As of 3 days ago, although labeled as unlikely, I don't know why, Shyko to G2.
Yeah, that's not happening. I don't think.
I mean, look, I'm just reading everyone can read this themselves. Liquipedia.net/rainbow6/portal rumors.
Pretty certain as to where he's going. It's not G2.
So I mean, look, at the end of the day, there's a lot happening, which I think is also, as we kind of look to close things up, and we'll touch on Turd and Mentalist to do so, but like, because we've kind of changed the landscape of the ecosystem, guys, where we've now got this break, this is possible. This is what's making it all possible. We would usually be getting ready for stage 1 like right now.
We'd pretty much be starting now, wouldn't they?
Yeah, we would have already started probably. So like that, you've now got the ability, because SI to stage 1 is more lengthy, which I think is a really good thing. I think it was about overdue and about time that we've made this change, ripped the band-aid off. I know it's a bit shit because obviously we haven't got much Siege for the next few months, but once we get back in stage 1 all the way through to next SI, it's got to be non-stop. Like from what is it, like June to Feb, it's like you've got Siege all year round. So it's going to be insane. But that's why we've got such a big transfer market happening here as well. So to close the Turdster and Mentalist situation, Turdster made a tweet apology, which I'm sure you can probably chuck up. I might just quickly go and find it. Because obviously I haven't read it actually for a few days now. It was quite intriguing to see. You don't typically see these kind of things. This was yesterday, formally addressing the situation regarding Team Joel and Mentalist. Again, for those unaware, by the way, during SI, Turster was on like this massive hate watch towards Mentalist, and only Mentalist. There was miscommunication and misconception regarding this, because I know Corey responded saying that he was hate watching the whole team. Of course, Corey helping out at SI for Team Joel. That was not true. I actually watched a little bit of Turd stream. He was quite literally cheering for the rest of the guys. He clearly had an issue with Mentalist. They played together. They had a falling out. These things can happen in esports. But at the end of the day, it's a strange tweet, is it not? Like, it's a strange one to me.
Very unlike Turd. Let's just put it that way.
Do you think it's corporate? Do you think it's corporate?
I mean, it's very intriguing. Like you said, on paper, this team should dominate Asia, and in turn with the new APAC format, pretty much be not a certainty, but a very strong possibility of qualifying for every event. But there is just that ticking time bomb where you kind of need Mentalist in the team for the cohesion, but at the same time, getting rid of him would have also gotten probably would have erased that potential friction that is maybe still underlying or hasn't been fully eradicated between those two, which, again, if you have even just two players going at it or two staff members, it causes issues. Like,
it's definitely Turd's last shot.
Oh, yeah, I would imagine so.
It has to
I think
be.
if this blows up again, he's done.
Yeah.
And I don't know if a double blow up is really going to put him in the favor of OS.
Previously, it's always been alluded to in terms of performance. I think we've kind of heard in the past, like, oh, he didn't have a strong enough operator pool, or there were other in-game issues. But quite frankly, I think it was a lot of the toxicity that you can get from Turbo, and everyone's seen it with his tweets and things like that. I think he's a good player. I don't see an issue with him mechanically. If you recall, guys, he was actually the highest rated EPS player going into 6 Invitational before getting removed. So, like, the guy can play the game. And
something's got to give. If you're if you're posting those numbers, there's clearly
and that's with Reaps on the roster,
not visible to us.
Yeah, and so like I think as long as he can not only elevate his game inside of the server, but also just become a better teammate. This is why I truly believe the potential for this roster is so high. I'm big on this team. I'm big on Weibo. But please, guys, don't throw it back in my fucking face and blow up, and you have your blow-ups and your team fights and things like that. Be adults. You've got so much potential. Focus on the game. That goes for not just Turd, but for everyone. Everyone on that roster, right? So I think Reaps is prone to sometimes being a little bit of a shitter as well. Like, don't get me wrong. It's not just Turd. So, at the end of the day, I think I'm very high on that roster. It's a strange tweet, but also at the same time commendable. If Turd actually did write that and did so out of his own volition.
Well, if it's sincere,
great, and if it's sincere.
But actions speak louder than words. If in 6 months' time he gets kicked again because of poor behavior or poor performance, then
the rest you can't.
You've actually got to translate that into the server, and I really hope that's the case, because I agree that this roster has, again, the makings. But how many times have we seen the makings of a good team completely fumble?
And they've got time. They've got time. That's the thing. They've got time to work. This is not like you've got to go and play tomorrow or play in a week time or anything. So I've got my eye on them big time going into 2025.
And also, I mean, touching on Weibo as well, having pretty sizable Chinese org in Siege is a move in the right direction. I know it was
get ready to learn Chinese.
I know there was news there was news a while ago about the game, getting officially approved in China, or like whatever that process is. I'm not saying this knowing insider info, but I really hope that this is maybe a positive sign that China and its inclusion in Siege is somewhere on the horizon, potentially. Otherwise, why would a Chinese org be investing in the game?
Yeah.
Not sure. Hopefully that's the case.
All right, guys, we're going to look to wrap things up here for episode 31. We've just ticked over an hour. Big episode. Obviously, there was a lot to get through, considering we didn't really get to do a lot of the content we wanted to do, to be completely transparent, with missing, with yourself missing SI, that period, it was very difficult to kind of want to get too involved in doing stuff pre-SI. Originally we had a bunch of stuff planned to put some content out pre-SI, which is what we typically do, our power rankings, our predictions, all of those things. But with your visa situation playing out the way that it did, we just were not in the headspace to go and put that content out. We apologize. That's why there was a lack of content pre-SI. During SI as well, of course, you weren't even there. I was able to string together, with a big help from Jack Fresh, at least an episode with him and Rob, which we at least got something out during the event. But again, that was mainly because Fresh let us use that equipment. Again, we didn't really have much else of a choice. And obviously post SI, kind of just let things breathe a little bit and then kind of get back underway. And hopefully for the remainder of the year now, we can kind of get back more into a groove of things as we start to get more information. Of course, if there's not really much happening in the landscape for what will now be, typically we have this kind of episode middle of the year, your June, July, August, there's usually not much Siege. That's changing now. So yes, over the next month or two, there might not be as many episodes per week. But anytime there's big information, of course, with Siege X coming out, we're going to be putting content
I promise
around
you,
that. Yeah.
There'll be so much to talk about with Siege X.
Yeah.
We'll have like 12 hours worth of content to talk about, so we'll be fine.
So stay up to date, of course, on all of the socials. Make sure, of course, if you want to get involved with our lovely community in Discord, we've been able to give them a lot of information and updates pertaining to our situation. They got to know all about our visa stuff and things like that as it was all happening, and they had certainly got a bit more of an understanding as to why we couldn't get as much out. Join the Patreon. Doesn't cost too much to just kind of join the Discord, hang out with everyone. It's really, really good, especially when all of the events are on. And, you know, with things like CJX, everyone can kind of talk amongst themselves. It's a great community. And a big thank you, of course, to those that are subscribed. And we will see you, hopefully not too far into the future, because with CJX around the corner, we'll be back with episode 32, not too far in the future. Much love.